Well, last time we chatted, Walker Buehler had just gotten Shohei Ohtani as a teammate, and now it's like undoubtedly the super team Dodgers that Walker Buehler is a part of. Since then, it's 12 years for 325 for Yamamoto. It's trading for Tyler Glasnow, extending him, and we're super amped to have a huge part of this rotation with us like weekly as this season rolls on. So, I asked you when you guys got Ohtani, your immediate reaction. First and foremost, how are you? You're in LA now. Are you living the dream?
Yeah, we're good. No, I told you guys I thought we weren't done, but
Yeah.
um no, it was quick. It was kind of a little cascade of adding Glasnow and Yamamoto and looking forward to meeting those guys. We went into the stadium today, but they were elsewhere. I think Yamamoto's back in Japan and then Otani's supposed to be there tomorrow. So be good to start hanging out with them and throwing and doing all that kind of stuff.
Was it almost snowballing like the reaction of obviously we talked through the Otani reaction, then the Yamamoto reaction, then the Glasnow reaction. Was it like kind of the same feeling times three?
Um, yeah, somewhat. I think the Yamamoto deal is different than Glasnow, right? Obviously, that amount of money, most ever for a starting pitcher only or whatever, for a guy that hasn't played here yet is kind of a different thing and obviously something we haven't seen before. Glasnow's kind of different, more familiar just because we've played against him, known of him. Um, obviously with the World Series and um, he's a high level arm that if you've kind of followed what our organization does, tends to um, elevate guys in terms of performance and obviously elevating him is very incremental, I think, and um, he's a race car that
Yeah.
we just want to put new tires on and hope it goes a little bit faster, right? And I'm very excited to watch him in person, every fifth, and I think everyone's very excited to see Yamamoto over here in the States.
Yeah, that's kind of the first question I wanted to ask was of course you're going to be excited to get a player like Yamamoto because the Dodgers are a smart franchise and a lot of other smart franchises were very eager to make him one of the, if not the highest paid pitcher that
Yep.
ever in the sport. So obviously the talent's there, but there's still this question of what does it look like up close and personal? Of course, what he's done in other places has been absolutely incredible. What he's done in Japan and in different fronts has been more than enough to I think be a solid track record. But how eager are you to just see this guy like throw a bullpen in front of you and just see what it all looks like in person? Because it almost becomes like a legend to a degree when you're seeing and hearing all of this. But it's like we're ball players. We want to strap up and see what it looks like.
Right. Yeah. I think the first impression, not being the biggest guy, I'm kind of excited to see how big or not big he is. You hear all these kind of rumors and you've seen him pitch, but on TV you never really know. And the velocity and the splitter and all of that kind of stuff. But you've heard a lot about the training methods and the throwing javelins and the hypermobility and stuff like that. And I think probably the last guy that we've heard kind of that kind of conversation around was probably Lincecum, from what I can remember, and from my understanding, they're kind of similar stature. So I'm excited to see kind of what it all really looks like. But, I think to win 3 MVPs by the time you're 25 in any professional league, there's something there. It's not some, weird conspiracy deal, right? Like the guy can throw a ball and we'll just see how it plays, I guess.
So scale of 1 to 10, how much interest do you have in trying javelin with him? And then scale of 1 to 10, how much interest do you have like starting one of his stretching mobility workouts and like probably not finishing, but getting as far as you can?
Yeah, if I had to choose for, one of each, it'd be the javelin. The stretching thing's not my thing, but I do live in LA. I guess we get into the yoga and the hot yoga and all that kind of stuff out here. So we'll see. I guess we'll just see how good it looks in person and if I need to get some of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he's throwing the way that I saw him throw in some of those starts closing out his career at the MPB, maybe every pitcher in baseball might start doing some of the things that he was doing. Like, did you see those clips on Twitter or on X of some of the maneuvers that he can do with his body?
Yeah, the where he's like doing the back bridge and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd pass out.
Yeah, it doesn't look looks like he's worked on it. I'll say that for sure.
Man, but like, what's your counter? So he walks you through like a mobility routine, and then you take him to Santa Anita. Like, what are you gonna do to kind of give it back to him?
No, I mean, I think for me, it's probably the squat rack. I obviously don't know how strong he is, but that's kind of always been my thing. It's kind of the only thing I got. So, the way I pick horses, I don't think taking him there will make me look any better, right? It'll make me look like just an idiot that likes to pick one number, you know. But no, I mean, I think the squat rack might be my only thing.
Last question I have on the two new teammates is, of course, Glasnow, another guy that in a different way is capable of just doing some things physically that not
Yeah.
many guys can in terms of throwing a baseball. What I'm most excited about is it feels like you have so many different looks of stardom when it comes to what you got on the mound between yourself, between the two new additions, between hopefully Kirsch if he's back there, and just all the different talented arms that you have. I know it's not like the Cape Cod League where guys hang out and share, information and thoughts and stuff like that. But when you got this like Avengers rotation, do you look forward to potentially having some sort of conversations with guys that are, again, come from such different backgrounds that you could probably get something, pretty interesting from each of them and probably share some interesting things with them from your side too.
Yeah, I mean, I think luckily for me, I've, through the stages of my career, I've largely felt that we've kind of always had that, right? In terms of playing with Kirsch and the guys that we've had here, right? And so I think largely it's the same situation that I feel like I've kind of always been in, except
Awesome.
I'm just getting older, and so I'm not the 24-year-old anymore that's at the end of the bench. So, but no, we also have Bobby Miller and some of these other younger guys that stepped up big, and we're going to need a lot out of them, especially with some of the stuff with my innings and with Glass coming back, and then Otani coming back next year. You got a lot of puzzle pieces there, and a lot of them are really, really good. So we've got to kind of figure out how to mix and match. And yeah, it's going to be exciting, and it's a special time, I think, to play baseball in LA. And I think one of the best things about LA is just the kind of global reach. And I think if most people would have said what's the best landing spot for those two guys, not from a fandom perspective or whatever, but just the familiarity and the kind of global effect, I think LA and New York are the two that you would have talked about. And they both chose here, and we're really stoked up about it.
I want to go back to that last point that you made about Bobby Miller. And yes, he's a young piece that's expected to, have a serious role in this thing. But, you're one of those guys that I think a lot of these young arms can ask questions to now because you have had tangible big league success for several years. What kind of opportunity does a Bobby Miller or an Emmett Sheehan or a Gavin Stone have to like be the young guy in big league spring training with all these guys? And they can go ask Walker Buehler a question on Tuesday, and then Tyler Glasnow a question on Wednesday, and then Yamamoto a question on Thursday. And oh, by the way, like you've got Otani just kind of hanging out over there taking BP.
Yeah, I think the guys that are coming up now, and we've talked a lot about the younger pitchers and kind of defining the success early and that kind of stuff. And, my experience is probably a little bit different in that I kind of grew up in old school baseball, lift your leg, push off, throw, keep the ball down, do this, do that. And then learned the kind of new school stuff right when I got to pro ball and maybe a little bit at the end of college, but I couldn't have told you what my spin rate was in college or anything like that. But these guys largely have been reading the same book, if you will, their whole career, right? They've known this stuff a lot longer and not longer, but a larger portion of their career. And so I think for me, the advantage that I got out of that was able to kind of learn this stuff, then watch the guys that didn't throw or change anything to try and do that,
Yeah.
and how they achieved it. So I kind of got two different perspectives on what those things really meant. And so, 2400 spin rate fastball for me meant a lot of different things because I could see, oh, these four guys do it. How do they do it? And there's four different ways, right? And so, I think watching guys that have had success, and Bobby's had a lot of success in his career already, right? But from his perspective, to be able to watch 4 or 5, or when Shohei gets back, and all of these guys, like, hopefully go and be really good. I think, at least in my experience, it was being able to watch so many different ways to do it, knowing that there were some constants and some things that were kind of similar between everyone. And I think the guys coming from Japan, or, Shohei and Yamamoto, I guess Shohei's not really coming from Japan anymore, but being able to watch those guys where it's such even a more drastic example of a different way to do things, I think there's nothing but positives that come out of that.
It is really cool that you mentioned just everything looking so different, especially with the Japanese mechanics and whatever, but all trying to achieve the same goal and usually use the same muscles and do the same things upon the delivery, which is really cool. It's also interesting. You mentioned Shohei, being here for a little bit. He's become, the golden boy of baseball in a lot of ways because he's on a team that nobody cares about, that everybody desperately wanted to see go to the playoffs and the Angels, and it just didn't happen. But also he just is a very quiet, likable guy who keeps to himself. You could say the same for Freddie Freeman. You could say the same for Mookie Betts. You could say the same for a lot of the players on your team. But I'm sure you've kind of caught some of the general vibe of baseball fans, which is just what always happens when you put together a ridiculous roster. People get mad, right? And they really want to see you guys, lose. They want to see their team take you down. How do you feel like? Do you feel like there's any of that sense of potentially embracing like a villainous role within the Dodgers? I know you guys are just going to go out and do your thing, but there is going to be a level of people are going to pay a lot of money to go see you guys play wherever you go. You're going to be on tour, and people are not going to want to see you win at all. It already is that way. I think it's going to be that way even more, right? Is that the sense you guys have from the inside?
Yeah, I mean, I think in LA, it's kind of always been that in some way. I also think the Houston thing kind of changed that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because it was kind of, we hadn't won one, and then the argument, the Houston thing, we should have won one, and we had the team and all of that stuff. And then we win one in COVID. It's just like every time there's been some sort of like easy Twitter criticism, right? The whatever they call it, the Mickey Mouse thing and stuff. Like, at the end of the day, there's however many guys playing Major League Baseball, and every single one of them wanted to win the last game of the year, right? And we happened to do it that year, and it kind of is what it is. But when you win 100 games pretty consistently, there wasn't a whole lot of people that loved the Yankees when they were playing the way they were in the early 2000s that weren't Yankees fans, right? And I think we've got a ways to go before we get to that point where you've got to win some world championships and do some things like that. But the idea that people would kind of hate on a team that's been financially responsible, that's producing winning teams and winning players that they draft for spending money on big boy players, like, it just doesn't really track for me that much. You know what I mean? I think,
Yeah.
but it is a sport thing, right? I think the NFL is the only one that it kind of doesn't really get heard of that much. But in the NBA, you think about the Warriors of the past 10 years and the amount of star power, and they get criticized individually, right? Oh, Kevin Durant, I can't believe he went to Golden State, or LeBron to Miami or whatever. But in baseball, it's largely the same thing. People want to go play with good players, and watching from afar, even the past 2 years, like, we got a lot of good players and a lot of guys that at the All-Star game you want to hang out with, and you see a lot of guys from other organizations kind of gravitate. I've been lucky to go to a couple of them, and we've had a large contingent there both times, and seemingly a lot of people migrate to that contingent, right? And that stuff matters, right? Like, you don't want to go play with people you don't like. So I think it's a pretty cool combination of the organization being able to do it, putting ourselves in a position to do it, as well as I guess the perception being that it's a pretty good room of grown men that want to do the same thing and want to go win.
Yeah. Generic Twitter users hate you guys for spending too much. They
Mhm.
hate other teams for not spending at all.
Right.
So they're just going to find something to be angry about. And I mean, you
Right.
guys know it as good as anybody on planet Earth that people are going to find a way to be pissed at public figures no matter what. So I'm sure this is just constant for you.
No, I mean, I think this is great. It's all on the organization. It's not on us, right? We don't get to write the check. So, we're just lucky that they sign and wear the same uniform that we wear.
Hell yeah. What's up with you, man? So you just moved to LA and
Yep.
you're here for the season. Give me like a timeline of from now until pitchers and catchers report in middle to late February.
Yeah. Well, so we're early. This is the other thing that we forgot about to talk about with Yamamoto and Shohei is that we're opening in Korea.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's my kind of gut feeling is it's going to be like traveling with the Beatles over there.
Oh man.
So that one will be interesting. Kind of shades like 98 Bulls without all the rings in a row. I have all these pictures of just these seas of people and 95% of our team being able to just walk right through.
Yes. Document it though. Like
But
make sure you take photos and videos of like what it's like. Did you see the photo of Quinn Ewers at an empty podium looking
yeah,
back at Arch Manning in the full podium? I
yeah,
want a photo kind of like that with you looking at Shohei's podium.
that's
And I
my
think you'll have
expectation.
some media, but like Shohei's going to have more respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fine with that. But I'm kind of excited for it. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because I went out to the London series and it was a blast, to be honest. And it seemed like the players enjoyed it. Obviously,
Yeah.
didn't really specifically ask everybody and take a census, but it seemed like it was fun and it was a great turnout. I mean, that was in the UK where baseball's not nearly as big as it is in Korea and Japan, and they had 55,000 multiple games. It obviously is a little bit of a heavy lift to travel across the world and to go open up your season when you're dialed in and trying to get off to a hot start. But how excited are you guys about those kinds of opportunities? One, of course, it's great to grow the game, but two, it's got to be a pretty memorable experience too when you're hoping to play 15 years or 20 years or however long, and you can have a couple specific memories where opening day was a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean the idea of like I don't know if I'd ever would get on a plane and go to Korea. Like there's, nothing against Seoul, Korea. I don't know if that lift would ever be something that I would do.
Right.
But we're playing there and we got to go. And so you start getting to accumulate those, what you're talking about, the memories or just things that you probably wouldn't do otherwise. And, we're expecting our baby girl at the end of January and we're going to take her with us, hopefully. Like, yeah, when you were, 6 weeks old, you went to Korea. Like,
Yeah.
there's just things that you can't really, you probably wouldn't do otherwise that come along with it. And, it's something that I'm really excited about.
Are you, how can you make sure to minimize the impact of crying baby on flight to Korea if you do have to deal with that? Do you have any kind
Well,
of creative measures?
no, we've had a lot of experience. Our team is very parent heavy now. So I think
I was going to say fertile, but
yeah, if she is able to go, I think there'll be a lot of understanding people on the plane. So I'm not too concerned about that side of it.
good. All right. So
Yeah.
kids could, yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I want to go out there so desperately, but the flight is just crazy to me. Like I
It's
want to go
long.
to every international series I can go to, but kind of echoing Walker's sentiment, like I don't like flying that much. There's not a lot of things on this planet. I'm flying, 16 hours. Is it 16? Is it a 16-hour commute?
I think so. I haven't really looked in it too much because I don't want to think about it too much, but yeah, we're gonna be up in the air for a while.
Yeah.
Longest bus ride you did in the minor leagues or in college? What was it? This is way nicer than a minor league bus. I will tell you that.
Yeah, I mean low A, there's some serious treks, but that was more just because the playoffs we were doing it like every 2 days.
Okay.
I think we did like 2,100 miles in like 2 weeks
Oh, via
in the
bus.
playoffs in low A.
Ugh.
Missouri, Nashville to Missouri is not short.
Yeah.
Nashville to Arkansas is not short.
Yeah.
You You get anything over 6-8 hours on a bus, you're talking some time. We were very fortunate at Vanderbilt though. They started putting in the sleeper bus thing.
Nice.
So we would have like two, and being in Nashville, we would have like tour buses that, they'd be like, oh yeah, we just cleaned it all up. We had such and such tour on here for the past 3 months or what. Like it was just a wild deal. But we were very fortunate to have those.
Did you ever at any stop have, whether it was college, minors, or even in the big leagues, just a nightmare travel story, or just like one of those situations that you're like, if this ever happens again, I think I'll just walk off and figure it out?
Yeah, we had a weird scenario where we played New York. We played the Mets Sunday Night Baseball. I don't know. I think I pitched maybe on Sunday Night Baseball against Wheeler. Then we flew back from New York to LA. Landed at like 4 or 5 in the morning LA time, maybe 3 in the morning LA time, and then we played the Cardinals at 4. They didn't even push it to 7. So that was probably the worst I've seen in the major leagues.
Man, did you sleep at the ballpark? Did you go home? Like, what time did you report for a 4 o'clock game?
No, I mean in that circumstance, everybody, it was like mandatory don't show up before 2 kind of thing, like show and go. But still, you're talking 7 o'clock game, out of the park at 11. So like get to the airport at 12, 6-hour flight, 3-hour time difference. It was just kind of an interesting one.
All right, we are going to hit. I do want to talk about the sale thing, and I want to talk about the rental market too, because the rental market is kind of the thing in pitching right now. Seeing Frankie Montas get 16 mil for a year after he threw, what was it, Arm, 3 innings in the minor leagues and the big leagues.
Yeah, if you combine the minor leagues and the big leagues, yes.
Man, so like the numbers are crazy. But before that, want to go back to kind of like timeline leading into pitchers and catchers reporting. So what does Walker Buehler's January look like?
Yeah, I'll be here. I'll work out at the stadium. I might stop in some other spots around here. I have a few buddies that live out here and have been other places, but I'll be in the stadium probably 4 or 5 days a week and just playing catch and doing all that stuff. And I guess the big decision is just trying to figure out how we're going to handle my innings and then reverse engineer everything from either opening day or a little bit later, whatever we're going to end up doing, to kind of start setting when I'm going to get on the mound, where I'm going to be at when we get to spring training, all those kind of details, so we can try and make, the ramp up make sense. I don't want to get going too early and then I don't throw for a month or whatever, or the opposite, right? I don't want to rush or I don't want to be kind of ready to go and then not pitch. So, that's the big decision to be made now, as well as, having a kid thrown in there right before I leave. So, we got some stuff in the air, but, get a good month of training and obviously have the people that I've worked with and the people that I trust out here. And, it should be a good month.
The only thing that I struggle to almost follow in terms of the patterns and things, and I don't know if it's case by case, I assume it is, when you try to set that innings limit, like what are some of the, I guess, essentials? Like, is it doctor to doctor? Is it things that you start to kind of relay back? Like, how do you come up with a number as you lead into, the season and get closer? Obviously it's dependent on how you feel, but I feel like it's kind of a wide range on players in different circumstances that are all kind of similar at the same time, because it's usually the same injury or slightly similar to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point you're doing your best guessing, right? Because you could get to 80 innings and you could feel terrible, you could feel great or whatever. I think largely your body will kind of tell you. I also just know myself where I will try and push anywhere that I can, and it's just kind of how I am, and maybe the reason I'm in the situation that I'm in, but it is what it is. And having done this rehab before, I think it would be easy to try and take that first year and do very similar to what I did in the minor leagues, but the injured list rules are different now. So, I would skip a start every so often, and you could go on the 10-day then, and now it's 15. So, then you're talking about what's like, does that actually make any sense to do it that way? So it's just a lot of kind of, for lack of a better term, it's like math or scheduling or calendar, however you want to say it, but just trying to figure that out and then being able to adapt from it, because it's not going to all go perfect, and you're going to have to alter some things. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's trying to leave some room to pitch in the playoffs. And I think that's the big goal. And I think our organization probably does the best in baseball of putting us in a position to be pretty healthy going in the playoffs, and we just got to perform at that time. You know what I mean? And instead of, we're very adaptable in terms of, okay, you're hurt, but you're not that hurt, and let's figure this out. And here's a couple different options, and here's how we can handle it. And, you know, in my experience with him, it has been great that way.
We've learned your mindset over the last, what, 8 months, 9 months that we've been talking to you. And like, it's very clear that going through this before is kind of helping you go through it again. Obviously, it's not fun to do it a second time, but it's clearly helping. We'll say, like, you also know your body way better now than you probably did the first time. And there are more bells and whistles at your disposal now than there
Yeah.
were the first time. So
Absolutely.
when it comes to, and we talked about it through like the beginning of the rehab process and really the end of the rehab process, but when it comes to revamping for your first full season back, what's different now than 2015?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that the end goal is a little bit clearer in terms of, I need the ball to come out of my hand this way. I need to be able to execute this thing, right? When you're in the minor leagues, you're just trying to like, I want to throw hard and I want to be good. Like, well, you don't really know. I probably didn't really know what being good in the major leagues looked like or what I needed to be able to do. And, you know, even, you know, obviously there's a lot I want to improve on even when I was healthy, but like, you have a general understanding or idea of like what you need to be able to do and the timelines of that and bouncing back and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, I think it's a huge advantage just because you can kind of push in certain places and give yourself a little grace in other places, just so you can kind of, you know, when you know where you're going, there's some, you can kind of steer that road a little better, I guess.
You always set yourself to a high standard, of course, with the success you've had in the past. And you talked about just kind of the way the ball was coming out of your hand when you were making that return and threw a little bit, you know, in those rehab appearances and even in the bullpens. And or just sometimes the ball just on breaking balls, whatever the pitch may have been, you've thrown so many baseballs, you know when it's coming out of your hand right or wrong, or not wrong, but at least just not how you want it to. How do you manage that? I think I don't want to say it's like perfectionism, but that desire to be as close to where you were at your best, or if not better than that, while also being patient and knowing, hey, this is a process, right? Second Tommy John, want to make sure I stay healthy. You talk about the propensity of wanting to push yourself, which is why you are where you are in terms of your success, but it's also, you know, something that you probably have to rein in a little bit. Like, have you thought about how you're going to balance all that and, you know, how you use that for good without pushing it too far?
Right. I mean, I think walking into this spring training, like you're out of rehab, right? So now it's about trying to perform, and that's the biggest thing. Obviously, you're going to monitor some of the physical stuff and whatnot, but it's not, you know, I'm not on a timeline anymore. I can't throw till 6 months or what. Like you're out of that. So
Yeah.
then it's about performing and trying to put my body in a place where where it feels like I can perform, as opposed to actually physically being able to do it, right? Like I can pick up a ball and throw it. So let's figure out how to go get people out. And that's kind of a, you know, it's an encouraging thing, but it's kind of a return to normal, right? Like that's what we're always doing all the time. And, you know, I'd rather be worried about the perfectionist side of it, of my cutter or this or that, or my execution or whatever, as opposed to like how my elbow feels every morning, right? It's just
Yeah.
a lot easier place to be.
It's way more fun to be there too, I'm sure. All right, couple more things. When you close your eyes and see Chris Sale, who do you see? And like, I want to talk about this trade a little bit, because Sale and 17 mil is going from Boston to Atlanta. So Atlanta owes him 1 year at 10.5 and a club option at 20. Vaughn Grissom is the return. Sale, I feel like, is a guy that some baseball fans have soured on because of time. Like a lot of time has passed since he was dominant, but I feel like a lot of baseball players look at that guy and it's like, that's still fucking Chris Sale. Like that's the guy that was putting up Pedro K numbers. So when you close your eyes and see Chris Sale, do you see the guy that was striking out the world in Chicago, the guy that finished the World Series in Boston, or the guy that struggled to stay on the field in Boston for the last 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's definitely the Boston Sale and what he did in that World Series and coming out of the bullpen and all of that stuff. You know, I think after the run in Chicago, the success in Boston, right? I think everyone's kind of perception of him was that he was a guy that would do stuff like that and come out of the bullpen and be kind of an animal, right? Um, especially he had the belly button ring or whatever had happened and all of that. You know, I have some backstory on that. I will not disclose, that's somebody else's deal, but you know, I think he made a lot of sacrifices to be able to do that, and I think largely probably is a part of why he kind of has had, you know, trouble staying on the field. But you know, for him, I think in my perspective, and including my own bias on it, right? Like I have to think of him as the Chris Sale that kind of once was, because it's a health thing. It wasn't like he was healthy and had 4 bad years in a row, right? Like he wasn't playing, and largely he's looked pretty good when he's been healthy and back. And it may not be 100 like it was, but not many guys that have played however many 12 years, 15 years, whatever he's played now. Not many of those guys are still throwing 100 either, right? And so, yeah, definitely an interesting trade. I know Atlanta liked the Grissom guy a lot, and he's performed in AAA and he had a really good 25 game or 26 game stint at one point. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal, but you know, I kind of see both sides of it, I guess.
What does a guy like Sale, you know, we talked about on the episode before about how it feels like he can almost bring them a little bit of an edge. And David O'Brien of The Athletic was talking about that as, you know, just something that the Braves may need a little bit of. I think some people, you know, tend to get a little bit, it becomes very easy to just say, oh, like, you know, they're falling short in the postseason because they're, you know, missing that edge, or it's a chemistry thing or whatever. And sometimes it's just because there's a lot of good teams and it's hard. But with the Braves, you know, you kind of wonder, do they need that guy that's been there a little bit more, that guy that, you know, can really have that intensity and push him over? Can one player really create a ripple like that if it's a Chris Sale type of player, you know, being added to the fold there? And do you think that there was more? Of course, he's still good on the mound. He struck out 125 and a little over 100 innings last year. So when healthy, he's still a serviceable arm, and at that amount of money, great. But do you think that there was something, you know, beyond what's on the field that they were hoping maybe he could bring to the clubhouse?
Yeah, I'm sure. Obviously, I've never been in that clubhouse, and I don't really know many of their guys in terms of like playing with them, obviously. But you know, I don't think any team. I think it's very tough to get a team that has too much edge, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's inherently a good thing. Like, yeah, if you're the longest yard team, right? Like, there's too much edge. Like, that makes sense. But no, Atlanta's a well-run franchise, and obviously, you know, one of the 2 or 3 teams that are the most talented in the big leagues. And you know, he's a guy that's been there and done it. And when healthy, it's still one of the scarier left-handed, left on left at bats, and the angle. You know, I think a lot of people think like guys throw from out there, like the righties see it the whole way. Like it's still coming at an angle. It's still not like an easy thing. And you know, I don't know if us getting Shohei was a big part of it, and because we have Freddie and we have a lot of lefties, but you know, I think that kind of chess move, I think you can obviously like read between the lines, or what would you do if you're playing GM and you were trying to play this team or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he's talented, he's hard on lefties, and you know, I think if they monitor, I think they'll monitor him in some way because they want him at the end. And it's going to be interesting.
And Dodgers Braves is going to be interesting whenever you guys match up this year. That's going to be a doozy, and I'm very excited. I think from at least the outside looking in, Sale carries a similar perception to Scherzer, not from like, oh, automatic first ballot Hall of Fame, but like, I mean, the perception is kind of, hey, Scherzer's kind of a psychopath. And Sale, it's like, hey, Sale's kind of a psychopath.
Yeah.
I know we talked about Scherzer at the deadline where that influx of pure talent with Scherzer and Turner was big for you guys because, you know, it
Mhm.
just validates like, hey, we're a damn good team. We just got better. But from that edge point where Aram was saying, like, how comfortable was Scherzer coming in and feeling at home and like being that badass MF we know that guy can be? Because I assume Sale can probably operate in a similar way because he's entering a good team that got better because they add a guy that has that edge.
Yeah, I mean, I think largely, the Scherzer stuff was kind of predicated on his start day, right? And his kind of he is very it's the same word, but on it, like he's very crisp with how he operates, and he knows himself. He's made a lot of starts in the big leagues. There's no, it, no one can like tell him how to do things because he's done it, right? And I think largely we talk about the veteran presence thing, and I think just because some people are rough or rougher looking or whatever it is, right? Or their persona, like that veteran thing is kind of the more important of the two, right? I got to play with a lot of guys early in my career that had played a long time, and there's something to that guy that's done it and done it for a long time, and the calm that comes with that. And I think in a lot of ways that calm can really be the edge. We talk about edge being like some scary thing. I think edge is being able to be calmer, right? The calmer man wins is kind of a thing that's said a lot, but playing with Chase Utley and David Freese and guys that have done. Ryan Madsen, I remember, was having not a great year. We traded for him, and then in the playoffs, he was really, really good for us and through the postseason. Just guys that have really done it, and even in years where we weren't as successful, like Russell Martin, there was always this thing like, no, we're good. Like he's here, it's fine. You know what I mean? There's no panic in there, and I think that's largely what those veteran guys bring.
Yeah,
Last
that was gonna be my only question there was how much of an impact does it make when you give the ball to a guy with everything to lose or everything is on the edge there and could go one way or another and you just see his heart rate slow. Like how contagious is that to the rest of you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with veterans, especially veterans starting pitching for me, has always been the idea that like guys that have really done this a long time, and whether they've done it for 15 years or 5 years or whatever, like they're probably not going to beat themselves, right? Like you don't see many veterans go out and walk 6 guys or 8 guys or whatever in any game or a playoff game or whatever, right? Like you're going to have to beat them in some way, and I think that's such an important kind of, I don't want to keep saying calming, but it's like a calming thing to hand the guy a ball, hand that guy the ball and know that he's not going to beat himself. Like it's a 0% chance that's going to
Yeah.
happen. As opposed to, we've had young starters, and I was one of them that, like my first couple playoff games, it was just like I was beating myself a lot. And so when you've got really good teams, you're playing in the playoffs, they're obviously talented and successful teams themselves, and they beat me and I beat myself. Like it's really hard to get out of that. But these veteran guys can just go, and if you beat them, you beat them. If not, they win, and that's why they keep getting the ball.
last thing I want to hit on with you real quick is the rental market. And I think in the last 3 weeks, we've seen a couple of deals where it's like that much money on a 1 year deal for that guy that has been, like somewhat unavailable. We saw with Severino 1 year 13 to the Mets, and we saw Frankie Montas 1 year 16 to the Reds. And Montas, like that might have been double what a lot of other teams were expecting that guy to get. But man, like that's a thing. So with where we are in the need for starting pitchers, like listen, I've read the reports about Chris Getz wanting a ransom for Dylan Cease in trade talks too. Like every starting pitcher is so effing valuable right now.
Yeah.
How good does that make you feel as like somebody that is a very valuable commodity in Major League Baseball? Like somebody that,
Yeah.
like everybody kind of controls their own destiny, it seems, as a starting pitcher when it comes to,
Yeah.
a payday and who you are around the league.
Right. Yeah, I think largely we've seen this kind of 1 year bounce back contract happen for a long time, right? Even on our team, uh, Tyler Anderson's a great example of this, right? He gets out of Colorado, going to improve inherently. Comes to us, hopefully we helped him, and he goes and gets a deal in Anaheim. But I think largely you're seeing certain organizations take guys like that and make them better or make them have a better year at a higher clip, right? And I think that's largely behind this rental market thing is the inherent like belief is that you are going to make them better, as opposed to like, oh, we'll take a flyer. I think it largely used to be a flyer kind of 1 year deal, and now it's like we can fix it 1 year deal. And you're seeing even with Giolito, who 2 years ago was on the cusp of winning Cy Youngs, and he gets 40 million. Like, really think about it. Like 2 years ago, you would have thought he would have got 200 million, right? So yeah, it feels bigger in these kind of prove it contracts than it has in the past, but compared to 700 million or whatever some of these contracts are coming out to, like, it's all rising together. And I think, I haven't deep dived it really, but like the CBA is largely kind of doing what it is designed to do, and having a lot of these teams trying to make the playoffs any way they can with the expanded playoffs and stuff like that. So, Cincinnati's got a really, really talented young team, a lot of really talented young starting pitching. Like, if Frankie Montas is close to what he was for a couple years in Oakland, like, that probably pushes them into the playoffs. So, I think in their mind, it's like 1 year at 16. We're kind of set. We have our team, like, let's go be the Diamondbacks last year and put all this talent and have a couple older guys that have good years and see what happens. And, I think it's really, really good for baseball, to be honest with you.
That was the interesting aspect of the 1 year deal is it is, yeah, of course it's less guaranteed for a player long term. And of course you always want to, if you have an option for 9 figures, you're going to take that longer term 9 figures, even if it's a little lower AAV. But from a player empowerment perspective, right? How do you feel about that? Because in the NBA, you don't really see 1 year deals very often. If you do, it's a player that's eighth or ninth on the bench. NFL is kind of similar in some ways, but with baseball, you can really rebuild your stock in that
Yeah.
1 year while also getting more money for that singular season than you would have got AAV over multiple years. Like in
Right.
your experience with teammates that have kind of taken that approach, we saw Rodon do something similar with the Giants, and maybe
about
just friends
Bellinger?
that you never played with. Yeah, like how much do you think that is a positive trend overall for the game? Because while you want to see more long-term deals,
Yeah.
this does give players the opportunity to not lock themselves into a lower deal and bet on themselves a little bit. I think like Kirk Cousins taking the franchise tag like every year until he got himself his bag. Is it similar to that? Like, where do you kind of line up on that mentality and from what you've been able to see of other players in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that really comes to mind when I first started thinking about, especially position player wise, is like Ian Desmond, when he turned down a bunch of money in Washington and then ended up having a couple really good years in Colorado, and kind of, I don't know if he ever made what he would have made had he taken that deal, but like, he made a nice career for himself. Like Cody, similarly, like, you're starting to see that, like, yeah, the matchups matter. I think the biggest thing in our sport is the matchups matter. So you start playing in a certain division and they get left-handed heavy and you're a left-handed hitter, and maybe your swing's a little off, or you played 160 games the year before and then the playoffs and you're tired and whatever, you can have a bounce back year in baseball a lot more I think it's the path to having a breakout or bounce back year is a lot cleaner in baseball. So the 1 year deal and grabbing value from an organizational perspective seems like it's a lot more, you have a lot greater chance of achieving that in our sport largely. I guess the analogy that I think of it is like, if you're going to go on vacation, you're probably going to spend money like in a way that you wouldn't at home. Right. And that's representative of the 1 year deal, as opposed to like buying a home. You're going to look at it a lot differently. And that's giving somebody a bunch of years. And, sometimes people take I think people are more likely to spend too much money on a vacation than they would be on their home. Right. And so that's kind of the analogy that I look at it through, but it just seemingly has largely worked out a lot for teams and for players as well.
All right, Walker Buehler, Michigan, Washington next Monday. Who wins? What's the score?
Oof. Well, I went to the Rose Bowl. I think it'll be higher scoring, I believe, than the Alabama game.
Have you watched Penix play at all?
No,
Yeah,
I heard it
Washington
was
quarterback.
crazy last night.
Nuts. Freak.
Oh yeah.
How old is he? He's like 25, isn't he?
I think he's 24. He's fifth year. He was at IU actually. He was
Sixth
at
year,
Indiana.
I thought is this sixth year?
This might have been six. Yeah, Penix and Bo Nix is like, I mean, those two can file for AARP accounts, I bet.
I saw some graphic of like big boys starting NFL quarterbacks, and then like all the guys that are coming out of the draft, it's like the same age as all.
Yeah, I mean, Daniels is 23. Like the Heisman winner's 23 years old. Just bizarre.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I'll go 34-31 Michigan.
Wow.
Ooh.
Okay.
I hope it's
like
that good of a game.
Kind of a stock score.
No, I like it. I'm going super stock store. 35-28 Washington.
Oof. I growing up watching a lot of SEC football and like the physical. I was a big Ohio State fan kind of growing up. My dad lived in Cincy, and I remember all those teams, like the Troy Smith teams and Ted Ginn and all them.
Beanie Wells. Yep.
Beanie Wells, and you'd like, all right, this is we're physical this year, and then they go play Florida and they just get run through, right?
Yeah.
But that, we were there. It was not like that. Like Michigan's big and fast and physical, and I don't think Alabama's quite the 3 years ago Alabama, but they're still big and strong and fast. And
Oh yeah.
and that first drive, they sacked the guy like 3 or 4 times, 2 or 3 times on the first drive, and 5 times in the first quarter. They sacked the guy from Alabama. It was like, okay, like Michigan's not tiny and they're not weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. We haven't seen many without the SEC. I think this Georgia thing is going to haunt some people for a while, but yeah, I think Michigan wins.
Got you. Arm, what you got?
I got 42-35 Washington.
Wow.
I think I want to take Michigan for all the reasons that Walker just said, but I think it's going to be high scoring and the difference is going to be the quarterbacks. I don't have faith in McCarthy. I didn't even think he looked good in the last game. I thought they won despite him in a lot of ways. I know the stat line looked good, but I want to see them try to make McCarthy beat him. Corum, I don't think he's going to run the same way. So
I will tell you that game's a whole lot different if that first throw of the game isn't ruled incomplete.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was sitting on the Michigan side, and it was dead
You
quiet.
felt it, right? I could feel it through my TV, just the momentum that early. I didn't even think momentum could be created that early, but you felt it just like, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one, but it is what it is. I don't know. I think the big question is, does Harbaugh ride off into the sunset back to the NFL if they win?
Yes, absolutely. I would love if he was the next guy in Chicago, but he might be a Charger. He might be coming to your hood. You can hook him up with some good housing ideas.
I like it.
So, all right, talking football with Walker Buehler and a bunch of other stuff. Walker, you're the man. We'll talk to you soon. Cool.
All right, guys. Let's see.